This week has been loud. Wars, rumors of wars, threats, escalations. The markets tremble. Oil's going to be $100 a barrel. It's coming up next week, something. Nations posturing. And if we're honest, something in us tightens up a little bit, and we're like, what's going on? What kind of world are the grandkids going to grow up in? Is everything falling apart? I thought Trump was the guy who doesn't start wars, right? Are we on the edge of something bigger? If you watch certain Christian TV channels, right? This was all predicted in the book of Revelation, and they'll tell you how it all comes together. But they told you that same thing last decade and the decade before that too. But you think, hey, maybe this is it. This is the thing. And then we're in John 17. And you think to yourself, like, how does, these little passages in the Bible, how does this apply to all these big things that are happening in the world? But something astonishing, something wild is happening in John 17. The world is about to explode around Jesus. The betrayal is already in motion. A couple of chapters ago, he told Judas, go ahead and do what you're going to do. The soldiers are already being assembled to take Jesus away just a few verses later. And Jesus stops and he prays. He doesn't pray for the collapse of Rome. He doesn't pray for the angels to come in and sweep everyone away. He doesn't pray to escape all the pressure that he's facing. He prays for you. Not just the disciples. He prays for you sitting here today. Before the empires fall, before the headlines scroll, before the wars ignite, Jesus, the Son of God, is praying. And his prayer for you is not, Father, remove them from the trials that they face. It is, Father, keep them. Jesus goes before the Father's throne, our Father's throne, and that throne does not tremble, and neither must you. Look at John 17, verse 6. John 17, verse 6, Jesus says these words. He says, I have manifested your name. I have revealed your name. I have shown you your name to the people who you gave me out of the world. These are the people that the Father gave to Jesus. So you are of those people that the Father gave to Jesus. You're not self-made. You're not accidental. You're not an independent contractor who does what they want. You were given to Jesus by the Father. You are given to Jesus by the Father. Jesus says, I'll receive you. The Father has given you to Jesus, and Jesus will receives you. And then John 17:10. Look at John 17:10. All mine, everyone who belongs, everyone, all that you have given me, all I have is yours, and all that you have is mine, and glory has come to me through them. So in other words, everything that is given to Jesus, right, he recognizes that the Father has given to Jesus. And then he says that Jesus is glorified in those people that are given to him. So in you, given to Jesus, Jesus is glorified in you. You're glorified. Jesus is glorified in you. In our little church here and in all those other churches all around the world, Jesus is glorified in them. We are confused. We are weak. We are about to scatter sometimes. We're anxious. We're worried. And Jesus says still that he is glorified in us. So what's glory, real quick? Glory is a word we like to bash around and throw around. But glory it's the visible, you could say the visible weight of who God really is. The glory is the public display of the authority and beauty and truth of who God is. And Jesus says that glory is seen in his people. So what that means for you is it means that when you remain faithful, even though the world is loud and it's shaking, it means that when you refuse to be bitter or to hold a grudge against somebody else, when you decide to pray instead of panic, when you decide to worship instead of flying off the handle, you reveal who is truly reigning in your heart, in the world. Isaiah 6:11 says, I saw the Lord sitting high upon a throne, high and lifted up, and the train of his robe filled the temple. You remember the story? Isaiah goes to the temple and prays. He prays in the year that King Uzziah died. Isaiah 6:1 says, in the year King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord high and lifted up, and the train of his glory filled the temple. In the year that King Uzziah died, and the world was shaking, the world got loud that week. What's going to happen next? What's going on? Who's going to be the new king? What's that king going to do? How is he going to reign? What's going to happen? He's going to bring us into another war. What is going on? Isaiah was in the temple worshiping, and he saw the Lord high and lifted up, and the train of his robe filled the temple. The robe filled the temple. The throne of the Lord does not tremble, and neither must you. Not his throne, not his hand, not his face. Isaiah saw the hem, the edge, the robe, the trailing fabric of his robe filling the entire temple. Try to imagine that. The kings in Isaiah's day, they displayed their power by the length of their robe. Some of you are old enough to remember Princess Diana's wedding, right? Or the wedding of Kate. What's her? William, right? Is it William? Yeah. What? Diana and Charles. And then there was Kate Middleton and is it William? Yeah, and they got married. And if you remember those gals, the brides walking into the sanctuary, and their robe just kind of flows. It's beautiful, right? It shows in their case, not the power or authority, but it shows the immense beauty and glory of the bride marching in. It's the same for a king. The king's robe filling the temple would show their power. The longer the robe, the longer the train, the greater the glory. And Isaiah sees something beyond an earthly scale. The fabric that drags behind the king that Isaiah saw on the throne is enough to overwhelm the temple. And the temple was massive. And this is not an exaggeration. This is revelation of who God is. His robe filled the temple. And then Isaiah, seeing this vision of the Lord exalted in heaven, hears the angels singing before the Lord. And the song they sing says, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is filled with his glory." Notice what they don't say. They don't say, the throne room is full of his glory. They don't say, when you see the Lord, that's where glory is. They say, holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts, the Lord of heaven, the Lord of the armies of heaven. The whole earth is filled with his glory. The earth feels unstable to me. The earth hosts wars. The earth shakes. The earth quakes. The earth is saturated, though, in glory. We just don't see it. I've ventured to guess, if I took a poll and you were honest in answering the poll, you would not say, yeah, when I was reading the news this week, I thought to myself, the earth is filled with the glory of the Lord. Right? I venture to say, anytime you flip on, Facebook or Fox News or Huckabee or whoever's, giving you your news information, you don't leave that time thinking, yeah, the Lord is glorious. The Lord is good. See, my fear grows in proportion to what I imagine is large. And so for me, if war is in my imagination as large, then my fear will grow. If cultural collapse all around me, those crazy people up in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and what they're, right? If that is large in my mind, then my fear grows in proportion to that. But Isaiah says, lift up your eyes. The robe of the Lord fills the temple. The whole earth is full of his glory. Now here's the connection to John chapter 17. The one whose robe floods heaven, the one who is lifted up and exalted in the temple, is now praying in front of the disciples for the disciples. Just a few chapters ago, John reminds us that the Lord that was seated on the throne that Isaiah saw is Jesus Christ himself on that throne. And Jesus, who has been given everything, Jesus, who has been given you by the Father, is now praying for you. The one whose glory saturates the earth is interceding for you. The throne is not rattled by missiles. His robe is not trembling at the headlines. The seraphim and the cherubim are not panicking. They're saying, holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. And that glory is unmeasurable. It's unspeakable. It's unshakable. It's overwhelming glory. That's the atmosphere where your life is kept. You're not exposed. You're not at risk. You're enclosed. You're not hanging off the edge of history. You are wrapped up in the hem of his robe. And that is wonder. It's really hard to know how to dress this time of year, isn't it? Right? Like you can think you've got enough clothes and the right pair of gloves on, and if you're working outside like I have to do, you think that you're prepared, and then for whatever reason, the same set of gloves that you were wearing yesterday, that you're wearing the next day, even though the temperature is exactly the same, something in the air makes it way colder today than it was yesterday. I don't know how barometers work, but maybe it's the barometer or the humidity or something. But when things change like that, like knowing, when things change like that in our lives, knowing that we are wrapped up in the hem of the robe of the one we have been given to, protected and safe, no one can pluck them out of my hand, Jesus says. It makes all the difference. So I want you to hear that you are kept, held by God the Father in Jesus Christ. You're not removed from the world. You're not taken out of this situation, but you are kept. And that's what Jesus is praying for you. John 17, verse 11, Jesus prays, Holy Father, keep them in your name. In 17:15, Jesus says, I do not ask that you take them out of the world, but that you keep them from the evil one. Jesus explicitly says, don't remove them. I do not pray that you remove them, take them out of the world. He prays that you are kept, that you are held. Because Jesus wants you to know that the throne that he sits upon does not tremble, and neither should you. Because removal is not the mission. Taking you out of the world, removing you from the challenges that are in the world is not the mission. The mission that Jesus is on, the mission that was given to Jesus by the Father is that you will be kept. People who follow Jesus, the disciples, they'll be persecuted, imprisoned, martyred. They'll have hostility from those around him. We just read earlier about Stephen being martyred and the hostility he got from people who were his own people. Up until just a few short weeks and a month before, Stephen was one of them, and then he was rejected. The mission is Jesus will keep his disciples. We'll keep them secure. We'll keep them safe. We'll keep them unshaken. Rome is not stable. Rome is not gentle. But the disciples are kept, and they're held close. And the church endures. Why is that? Why does a church last? Why does any church last? Like, our little church, big churches, the church, capital C. Why does it last? Because keeping is stronger than chaos. That's why. Because Jesus and his ability and his authority to keep you and to hold you is stronger than anything that's chaotic going on around you. Keeping is stronger than chaos and the chaos in your heart. Because, honestly, if I'm honest with myself, you see all the crazy stuff going on all around you. And if I'm really honest with myself, I'm kind of part of that chaos too, right? Sometimes I don't just get swept up in it, and I do get swept up in it. Oh, everything's great, yeah, right? I do get swept up in it, but also I react incorrectly. I chase after things I shouldn't chase after, and so I'm part of that chaos as well. And so it's helpful for us to understand that Jesus keeping you is stronger than chaos on the outside and chaos on the inside. You are not clinging to God. God is clinging to you. You are not surviving history by luck. You are being held by the divine intention of God the Father and Jesus Christ, his Son. So sometimes we ask, why doesn't God just fix this? Why doesn't God just end this? Why are we still here? And the reason is because presence matters. The world must see what it looks like when someone belongs to the Father. The world has to see what it looks like to know that we are not abandoned when the rest of the world is abandoning us. You are being positioned by God to be a witness to the rest of the world. When you are obedient, you declare to the rest of the world that whatever it is that they think is important is not as important as being held by the Father through Jesus Christ, his Son, by being wrapped up in his robe and his glory, by dedicating our lives to something that is way more important than anything else, than everything crazy, anything else that the world says is important. The world says everything is unraveling and you should be afraid. And Jesus says, Father, keep them. Which voice will shape your heart? The voice that says the world is falling apart, or the voice that says, Father, keep them. Hold them close. Last thing before we move into before we move into our time around the table. John 17:17 says this. Sanctify them in the truth. Your word is truth. Sanctify them in the truth. Your word is truth. To sanctify something means to set it apart for a special purpose, a sacred purpose. Some of you may still have, that china you only bring out on certain occasions, right? Came from your Aunt Matilda from long ago, passed down for generations. Truth be told, you don't ever use it, but it's there in case we have a special occasion. That's what it means to be sanctified, is to be set aside, set apart for sacred, special purpose. It doesn't mean it's isolated. That's what we do with the china. We isolate it and put it off, in the special cabinet. But it means that you are sanctified, set apart for a purpose, not isolated. You're sanctified for a purpose, prepared for a purpose. Verse 18 says, as you sent me into the world, I have sent them into the world. Why are you kept? Why are you sanctified? What is the purpose? Your purpose is to be sent into the world. Into hostility sometimes, into misunderstanding sometimes, into suffering sometimes, into darkness sometimes. And in those times, to be steady, to be compassionate, to be truthful, to be obedient, just like Jesus was. There are old missionary stories, and I love old missionary stories because those guys were nuts. Like there's no reason that you should go into hostile native villages and have to sleep in trees because they're out to chase you. There's no reason that you should ever want to do that. But they go, and sometimes they don't see a single convert for years and years and years. And some of the stories are told like this. The old missionary goes, he works for years and years in upper wherever, and not a single convert over all of those years. And he goes home and retires and passes away, and nobody ever hears from that man again. The next missionary goes into that same village and sees thousands and thousands of people converted. And somebody says, well, why? Why did the second guy see thousands and thousands of converts, but the first guy did not? And sometimes you'll ask the natives there, and they will say, we had to know that it was real from life to death from that first guy before we would believe. You see what they're saying? We had to know that not hostility or misunderstanding or suffering or darkness or persecution would shake that man's faith before we would believe. And it never did. He worked his whole life in hostility and persecution and suffering, and never once did his faith shake. And so now we believe. Now we know it's true. That's the mission. That's the mission that we're on. To show that the throne does not shake. That the throne does not tremble, and so we do not tremble either. We do not fail. We do not falter because we are held in the train of his robe, held close. And we will continue to be obedient. We may not see any results, but we know there's going to be results. We may not see any victory, but we know who is victorious. Jesus was not removed from the cross. He was faithful through it. And because he was kept, you were saved. For their sake, this is verse 19, for their sake I consecrate myself, so that they also may be sanctified in truth. He sets himself apart. He consecrates himself, sets himself apart to die. The cross looks like collapse, but it was conquest. The world may look like collapse, but Christ is building his church. His robe fills the temple. The throne is not shaking. The Son is still praying. The Spirit is still sanctifying. The Father is still keeping us. You are not living at the edge of collapse. You're living under the canopy of God's glory. And some of you may have been thinking, the world is on collapse. Heaven's not keeping pace with what's going on in the world. But heaven is not anxious. Heaven is not refreshing the news feed to find out what happens tomorrow. Heaven is filled with glory, filled with holiness, filled with the robe of the train of God's glory that fills the earth with glory. And Christ prays. And Christ prays, not whispering in a bunker. The upper room was not a foxhole that the Lord was praying in, afraid. He arises from the heart of one who has been given everything. The resurrection is revealed in Jesus, and now the hem of his glory stretches further than any border, stretches further than any battlefield. And you're not living in a fragile moment. You're living under a universe that is governed by the Lord in heaven. The whole earth is filled with his glory, and he is governing the entire earth, and you are kept in that. Jesus was not removed from suffering. He was kept obedient through it, and now you are kept because of him. And this table represents those who, this table represents empires that have been outlasted. How many empires have risen and fallen since Jesus was on the scene? Like, we're going to celebrate 250 years, as Americans, which is awesome. It'll be fun. But that's only 250 years, right? The Roman Empire went like 600 or 800 years, and it is gone. The British Empire the British Empire is not an empire anymore. Collapsed. And this table represents fallen kingdoms, Roman kingdoms, fallen wars that came and went, and yet this table remains because Jesus remains. So we have an opportunity again to come and receive the grace of Christ, the keeping grace of Christ. You're not abandoned. You're wrapped in glory. You're prayed for. Empires will fall. Wars will rage. Markets will rise. Markets will collapse. But the throne of the Lord does not tremble. And neither must you. So I'm going to invite our leaders to come forward. And we're going to pray. And we're going to receive the grace of the Lord once again. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we ask that you would bless this time that we spend around your table. Remind us of who we are, kept in your arms, kept wrapped in your robe, secure. Teach our hearts to act not out of fear, but act out of security and safety. Act as ones who are fully loved. Show us your love and your grace through Jesus, Father.